speculation around whether this sort of thing might be happening,
Right.
and people just got out.
Yeah, and so what's going to happen is that the shareholders are already going to be hit by that. Their stocks can be diluted to 20% of its previous value. Also, as part of this deal, the shares will no longer be paying out dividends. So even on that 20%, there's no dividends going to be coming to you. So there's no reason to own the stock. Its value has just been cut to a fifth of what it was before. It won't be paying off. So pretty much no one is going to own these companies anyway, except for the federal government. I mean, leaving 20% of it private makes it seem like, oh, it's not a completely government-owned enterprise. It's still public. It's still publicly held. The Treasury just happens to be holding some stock. It's not really the case. Mm-hmm. And what's happened also is, as part of this HR 3221 bill that authorized this to happen, they raised the national debt cap by $800 billion. Mm-hmm. And doing that basically means that these companies can take on enormous amounts of capital infusions from the Treasury to do what the Treasury needs them to do. Mm-hmm. And what the Treasury needs them to do, the strategy, if you kind of look between the lines of what he's saying, is that there's all of these CDOs out there that everyone is invested in, and if they turn out to be as toxic as they're turning out to be, and this continues for the next year and a half as interest rates reset on the liar loans and things like that, mm-hmm. that the whole system will just come apart because everyone will be losing their wealth.
That's right, yeah.
So the idea is that using Fannie and Freddie, they will buy up all of these mortgage-backed securities, bring them into Fannie and Freddie, and using Treasury money. And so on the one hand, they'll get them out of the market. They'll flush the market clean. No more CDOs. This was a bad idea. Let's go back to using the securities in the mortgage market that work. On the other hand, it's going to mean that taxpayers are going to be shelling out a huge amount of money and increasing the national debt enormously in order to help this flushing go along.
That's right.
And sort of the way that this is structured is that for the next 16 months, it's planned that each organization will spend $20 billion a month increasing its holdings. And then the idea is then at 2009, it'll start reducing its holdings. So like once these things have aged out, the holdings will be reduced, and eventually Fannie and Freddie will get back on their feet, and theoretically will have restored the system to some health. But like even by the government's plan, we're in for a pretty rocky ride for the next 16 months. And if this doesn't work at flushing out the system in 16 months, they really aren't even thinking about that, because like that would mean things are in terrible shape.
Well, that's true, and it is very short-sighted, because when you speak about flushing out the system, now what does that allow the lenders to do? Because if you're a small-time bank and you're worried about all these bad mortgages, and now this is all being absolved, their idea, because so many people or so fewer people now are buying houses, taking out loans, they want to encourage people to once again do that and kind of go back to where we were a couple of years ago. So if people are able to continue to get low interest rates and feel comfortable taking out loans from banks because they have this guarantee now, their theory is that that's going to stimulate the economy. But at the same time, who's backing it up? Well, the same people taking out the loans are the ones who are paying taxes to then back it up. So it has to do with the whole financial system in general, and that we're almost like backing out. It comes full circle in this system, and that's quite dangerous, because it's almost the same as what got us into this mess in the first place, with propping up the whole market, the whole mortgage market, artificially low interest rates, people taking out loans that they can't necessarily afford. We're just hoping that by the time this all sort of passes, the economy is well on its feet in other areas too. Other markets are back up and running, and people all of a sudden won't be having to foreclose nearly as often, I guess, right, because other sectors will be better off. Yeah. But there's so many factors that go into this. I mean,
there's also just the simple fact that the way that these things were set up, all of the people who had made a poor investment and had was going to lose their money because of it, and all of the people who had created these things, instead of being punished by the market for having created something that is terrible for the market, mm-hmm, the federal government is going to buy their faulty product. Yeah. with the assumption that, okay, we now know that your faulty product is bad, don't do this again.
Yeah.
But at the same time, well, if the government's going to bail me out now, it's going to just give me enormous profits out of their own capital reserves. Why not try another scheme like that? Because even though it is horribly economically destructive to the whole of society, individuals have made out like bandits in CDO markets.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's something where you're basically creating market distortion, because you're telling people one piece of information, say that this is high quality, this is AAA rated debt. This is as safe a thing as gold or treasury bills to maintain the value of your capital. And on the other hand, they're actually like throwing a bunch of like shitty liar loans in there and being like, they have no idea what they're getting. It's almost like it's a swindle. In fact, the rating agencies are really deeply in on this, and so the government is creating moral hazard, where on the one hand you've got all these people who are like, oh no, the system's going to collapse, and it very well it is a serious systemic crisis. But on the other hand, by bailing out the people who caused the systemic crisis, you're leaving them in a position with access to lots of capital and power and the experience that this is a way that we've made money before. Well, I mean, if you've made money one way before, you're going to study how that works, and you're going to figure out other similar ways to make money.
Right.
And the only thing that'll change is that the federal debt is now, because of it, will be now like $600, $800 billion higher than it was, and the piece of the federal budget pie that is devoted exclusively to servicing the interest on the debt will increase. So there'll be even less money available for, say, bailing out Social Security or trying to fund all of these enormous obligations we have going into the future.
There's a lot of money that is, we're indebted to in many different areas, back to the people who are now continuing to front these bills, us, the people of America. But it's funny how these things tend to just gradually accumulate, and we ultimately, we very quickly get used to them. It's like, all these policies that they just kind of stick their toe in the water and test out the public, and then they put one foot in, and it gradually just kind of all move into putting it all in place, and we almost forgot that we were ever out on dry land, and not full swing into such a policy like this, because they've created this organization now, the FHFA, but when's it going to end? They're talking about in 2009 toning it down a little bit after we do a certain
December 1st,
have certain policies for a few months, and then we're going to consolidate it back. And we hear the administrations of the future, whether it be the McCain administration, the Obama administration, they're very much talking about the safety of the taxpayer and how we need to make sure the taxpayer isn't being taken advantage of, and that we're going to need to scale these organizations down. Well, now I understand there's going to be economic advisors in either cabinet, but how can these politicians really talk about scaling these things down? I mean, they're not economists. They're not. No one is a mastermind of the marketplace of the entire United States economy. There's so many factors and swings that no one can just control it accurately 100% of the time and predict what's going to happen. So these things accumulate. You can see it in many different areas. Something like the Department of Education. We forget that just 10 years ago, or no, not even 8 years ago, it was half the size that it is now. So much money has been invested. So when do we start scaling things back? When do we start scaling back the size of our government influence in every facet of everyday life? Because this is a big one. Now they have so much control over the housing market. So they can talk, today is the first day of it happening, and they can talk about scaling it down in the future. But to what degree is that really going to happen compared to the accumulation?
Yeah. And the expectations of the scaling back are so unrealistic. The expectation